What's up, everybody? This is Craig Pera, and you are listening to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions, a podcast to help you create and sustain healthy sexuality and a great life. And as everyone knows who's been listening for many, many years, a critical component of creating a great life, pardon the obvious, is your relationship, right? If your relationship isn't thriving, you die younger. You have more physical pain, emotional pain. And if you're listening to this, right, you've made some mistakes. You've stumbled, you've lied, you've kept secrets, sexual secrets that have caused your partner great harm. And undoubtedly, your relationship needs attention. Well, today I have a very special guest and someone who I'm so excited to introduce to my audience. Her name is Melissa Nanavati. And as I've been sharing lately with some of you, we've been going on this journey, Michelle and I together, and we've been meeting all these amazing people. Melissa and her husband were two of the most amazing people that we ever met. So let me introduce her, and then we're going to get her here. But no, first let me welcome you. Melissa, you're here listening to all this stuff. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Craig. I am so grateful to be here with you today.
Yeah, well, and guys, you're going to get, and gals, you're going to get a lot of value today. We're going to get practical with some really important tools. But let me tell you about Melissa. So she is a speaker. She's an author, and she's a relationship architect. We're going to talk about that later, because when we met, I fell in love with that word, and that really was cool. She helps high performers rebuild trust, reignite chemistry, and create systems for love that lasts. She blends neuroscience, biology, and lived experience to teach the art of relational courage. And if you've been paying attention, you know how important that is. Despite early success as a Fortune 100 consultant, best-selling textbook author, Melissa spent years struggling with an anxiety disorder, battling alcohol abuse, and enduring over 100 first dates in her search for her partner. When she finally met her husband, their relationship was forged through extraordinary pressure, raising $1.1 million for his world record expedition. And maybe if someday, if we're lucky, we'll have him on here, guys. This is just wild story, spending 4 months apart while running two businesses. And through that journey, Melissa developed frameworks and tools to help high achievers build peaceful, powerful relationships. She's a trusted relationship coach for executives, founders, and driven individuals seeking actionable, science-based tools to navigate love. Boom! I am so glad you're here, Melissa.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here with you today.
So here is my first question. I thought love was just supposed to happen. And if it's not happening, it means something's broken. There's something wrong with us. Why do we need... I know the answer, so I'm teasing it a little bit. Why do we need these systems and these tools and these frameworks to actually have a good relationship? Shouldn't it come naturally?
That is a fantastic question, and one I often get a lot. But like any other goal in life, you don't just leave it to chance, especially one this important. And that's where I think complacency really kills. Complacency kills relationships. When we think that the love should just be there, that if chemistry isn't there, there's nothing we can do about it. If passion fades, there's nothing we can do about it. But when we begin to take real ownership over our approach to love and set up systems and apply frameworks, we actually create the foundation for love to grow.
So, yeah, and people who are listening, you've probably heard some similar themes that I've been sharing with you over the years. You can't leave it to chance. How can you leave something so important, so complex, so rewarding, so devastating to chance? You can't. You can't. So let's talk about some of those frameworks. Melissa, what are you passionate about? I know you've got a couple that are really, really practical. And I was going down the BRAVE framework and then the FAST apology framework. They're both important. So what's calling you right now?
I think the BRAVE framework is one of the most important critical frameworks that I teach, not only on stages, but in one-on-one work with coaching clients. And there's actually a free gift at the end for any of the listeners that gets access to a detailed version of this framework But this is really the foundation of how do you start to weave in research from neuroscience, biology to create the conditions for your partner to really hear you to get to a point of resolution. So it is a simplified way and of thinking about how do I bring up the really uncomfortable conversations in a way that my partner's not only going to hear, but going to be prepared to have a really deep conversation and actually find solutions. A lot of times, what I've found in my research, and there's a lot of great frameworks when it comes to communication, talking about hard things, but what's unique about this framework is the action element. Because I think, similar to apologies, without action, it really falls flat. And there are some very specific things you can do, not only from a verbal standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, that allows your partner to really hear you and to feel safe and connected. But even before we dive into this, I think it's important to understand from a neuroscience perspective what are the elements that really create a sense of chemistry and safety. And I'm sure you've talked about this on your podcast before, but the importance and the role of the neurotransmitter dopamine. So, dopamine is that reward system within the brain, and you activate dopamine through things like novelty and play. And then you have oxytocin, which is the critical both hormone and neurotransmitter that is responsible for creating that sense of bonding and safety. So that's why it's really important in these frameworks, not just from a verbal standpoint, but to make sure you're creating some sort of physical contact when you're having hard conversations. You're holding hands, you have a hand on their leg because it releases oxytocin. And then the third really important neurotransmitter is serotonin. So this is the mood stabilizer. So thinking about how can we activate all of these different chemicals and things that are happening in the brain when we're having these hard conversations lays the foundation for a more effective conversation.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And one of the words that you said, Melissa, really means a lot here, safety.
Mm,
And so one of my favorite podcasts that I've ever done was the most important word in recovery, in healing, in life. And I used to think it was love. And that's important. And of course, that's important. But I realized about me, because of all the challenges that I've had, attaching, bonding, addiction, trauma, I can't have love if I don't feel safe.
absolutely. And I think that's one of the most critical elements of repair and rebuilding trust. And even is the precursor to feeling a sense of chemistry with your partner again. I think a lot of times in these cases where there's been some sort of mistake, it doesn't have to be a massive infraction in trust, but we have to create safety, not only for ourselves, but for our partner before we can come to resolution. And we have to create safety before we can feel attraction to our partner because that is the precursor. And I think that's where a lot of people miss the mark. They go to immediately big romantic gestures after making a mistake, but you have to create safety first. And we do that really intentionally. Even in having conversations, requesting, hey, could we hold hands while we're having this conversation? And this is a tactic I not only teach my coaching clients, but I do in my own marriage. Whenever we've had a hard conversation, and there's been many funny instances too, where one of us would let go of the other person's hand and we'd immediately grab it again. And just that act down regulates your nervous system. The act of creating physical touch through really hard conversations does two things. So, first, it releases oxytocin, and that's the bonding neurotransmitter or hormone. And then, second, it reminds you that you're on the same team. Because that is one of the key things when engaging in these hard conversations is framing it in a way that it doesn't feel adversarial. It's not you versus me. It's you and me versus the issue.
So important and good. I'm so glad there's so much that Melissa and I have in common. I have relationship infrastructure. She's a relationship architect. So let's talk about this brave framework. There's so many things that I love about it, and guys, you're gonna get this, right? So this is
Yes.
a free
You'll
gift.
get a printout.
You're gonna get this. You're gonna be able to print it out. This is something that really gonna bring value. So let's further inspire people to make sure they get this download, Melissa, because I absolutely love it. It's just so well done and so well structured. Tell me more.
Thank you. So the B really starts with begin within. And within this initial step, there are a couple of things that need to happen. The very first one is that you need to decide on what outcome do you want from the conversation. And usually the outcomes fall into one of three categories. It is you want deeper connection, you want to feel like this sense of support? So you want more support in your relationship in some way, or is that you want to break a pattern? And so, first identifying what is the outcome that you want of the conversation is what allows it to be more productive and not simply rehashing the past. I think that's absolutely critical. And within that, you also want to begin by assuming positive intent, especially if it's something like breaking a pattern. What is the positive reason that my partner could be doing this thing that I don't like? Because anytime we engage in any kind of behavior, even if it's destructive, there's a reason. And there's usually actually a positive reason that people forget. So when we can look at our partner and the actions they are taking and assume that they are coming from a positive frame, we can start to engage in the conversation in a way that, again, is less adversarial. And then finally, get regulated. So often we want to have these really hard conversations when we're in the heat of the moment, the emotions are running really high, but that's never the time to have the conversation.
Never,
Never.
never.
And that getting regulated can be as simple as taking a few conscious breaths in, out through the mouth, whatever that may be. So
Yeah,
after we've
yeah.
done all that pre-work, the B is all about beginning within. Then we get into R, which stands for request a time to talk. And this one, I have been guilty of not doing very well early in my marriage, even. I would want to talk about it immediately. I'm somebody who wants solutions right away. And having the conversation at a time where your partner is prepared means they can also be in a regulated state. So this can be as simple as a script that is also in the download. Hey, there's something that's been on my heart. When's a good time to talk? Right? There's no accusation there. You're simply framing it and giving your partner an opportunity to identify a time when they can be in the right headspace to have a deeper conversation.
And I wanna highlight and pause there just for a minute. That
Please.
is ridiculously important. Timing is everything. And every one of my clients, 99% of them know that professionally, the
Hmm.
men and the women, right? If they're in a professional environment, a leader, an entrepreneur, an executive, they know that to be a great leader, timing that conversation, preparing someone for that difficult conversation, setting expectations, but timing alone is really can be the big, big, big difference between having a successful outcome and a poor outcome. So I'm so glad that you focused on that.
Thank you for underscoring that because it really is the missed step so often. And again, the way that you frame it, and that's why I include scripts in that download, is so important. Because if you say, hey, I have an issue that I have to bring up with you, that's going to create a lot of fear. That's going to put your partner in their amygdala, in their part of their brain that's in fight or flight, instead of their prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking mind, where we want our partner to be when we're having these conversations. And that asking for a time is profoundly important. So
Yeah,
then,
so good,
yes,
good. Keep
thank
going,
you,
keep
thank you.
going.
Yeah, we'll keep working our way on a light level of this framework so that people can actually start to even think about how they can apply it. And A in the BRAVE framework stands for affirm and share. And again, there are scripts in there that explain exactly how to do this, but it is so critical when we engage in a difficult conversation that we pre-frame it with some very specific language. Things like, I'm not going to say this perfectly. Please don't get attached to my exact words. Because what can happen is if you start to engage in a hard conversation, your partner knows it's coming, they're going to nitpick every word. And the importance of saying, I'm not going to say this perfectly sets you both up for success. You then want to follow it up with something along the lines of, we're on the same team. I love you. I want the best possible outcome for this conversation. But again, reminding the other person that you are on the same team shifts the dynamic.
Yeah, we're in this together.
After,
We're in
yes.
this together.
Exactly. And only after that affirmation can you then share the issue, the thing that is on your heart. Always using I feel statements instead of you always, right? It's so critical that we frame it in the impact that something has had on you versus that accusation of what they're doing wrong. And that framing is everything, right? It's the difference between whether or not someone can hear you and you're on the same team or they get immediately defensive. So after that A comes to V. V actually might be on par in terms of the most important step with R. So requesting a time, and V stands for view and validate. People cannot hear us if they do not feel seen, felt, and heard. So even though this is about you bringing up an issue of something you want to work through, then ask your partner, what is your perspective? What's the story you're telling yourself when this incident happens? What is your experience? And then after they share, you have to validate their experience. And validation, I will say this twice, validation does not mean agreement. Validation does not mean agreement. Validation means acknowledging the impact that your actions or the scenario had on them. It's about validating their emotional experience. Just like, say, you bump into someone at the grocery store, you bump carts. You're going to apologize and acknowledge the impact. You're not apologizing for the intention, but you're apologizing for the impact that you had. So you don't have to agree with your partner to validate them. And I think that this is particularly difficult for people to understand, but validation is not agreement. It is simply the acknowledgement of the feelings.
And throughout this giveaway, I noticed that you have very specific scripts, Melissa.
Yes.
Why are those important? Why you I mean I'm literally reading the
Mhm.
words, and by the way, I borrowed one of them for my own personal life already, so
Amazing.
I love it. But tell me, why again, like why should I have to do this?
Mhm.
Tell me why
Seems
scripting is so
formulaic.
important.
Yes, it
Yeah,
seems formulaic, and this can feel there can be some initial resistance to having a conversation go in this formula. But this formula and these specific scripts are what allow someone to feel that felt, seen, heard in the conversation, and it keeps them out of getting into fight or flight. Because if you start to use language that is combative in any way, you push your partner out of their thinking mind and into their reactive brain. And so that's why these scripts and the language that you use is so critical. And these are scripts that we literally use in our marriage every time we have a hard conversation. And it will become natural and organic over time. And again, if something doesn't feel perfectly natural for you to say and it feels almost like you're a robot, adapt the script, but keep these framing scripts because you can adapt how you say it, right? But the importance is having the right language that does not feel adversarial.
yeah, and to reinforce that point is we need the scripts because we're conditioned to react from a place of fear. Get
Yes.
defensive, shut down, fight, flight, freeze, or people please, fawning. We don't have the words. We don't have the words to have honest, vulnerable conversations because we didn't learn to have those conversations. So, just like when I was a lawyer, I'm getting ready to go into court for the first time. You damn, damn well sure I knew exactly what I was going to say in the beginning. Maybe I wasn't sure where the judge was going to take me, but I had the questions I knew I had to ask. I was prepared to ask them. They were written down. They were in front of me. My intro was scripted. I learned it, and it sounded so unnatural in the beginning, but over time, I found my voice, and this is what this is for you listeners. This is to help you find your voice and speak your truth in your relationship so you don't stuff it down, so it doesn't go haywire and come out the other side doing things that are going to destroy your legacy in your marriage. So yeah, I wanted to highlight that point around scripting because I am a huge fan. I literally, when I was at my rock bottom, Melissa, I realized, I said to myself, I was like, if I was going into court or going into meet with the board, like I would be prepared. And here I am showing up for these deep conversations with no preparation. And I used to, and I look, they're going to be right here. I must have moved them. Okay. I usually have my 3x5 card props that I pull out for guys and say, I wrote on the 3x5 cards. I pulled out my notes because I needed them because I did not have the script to communicate my truth.
Exactly. And I think, too, if you think about anything you do in business, you don't go into a sales meeting unprepared. You have a couple of key talking points and you allow the conversation to evolve naturally. And that's exactly what this is. We're not saying use these scripts for every response to everything your partner says, but this will give you the foundation to start the conversation in a way that keeps you both regulated and on the same team. And like we mentioned a little while ago, through every one of these steps, the intention is that you are holding hands. You have a hand on their leg, maintaining that physical contact because it's releasing oxytocin and allowing you to feel more connected through the conversation.
Yeah, I've done that before, and you can feel the urge to pull away,
Yes.
and then that urge to pull away is a reminder of why you're holding hands in the first place. And sometimes you kind of, you're not feeling it, but it comes back.
Yeah,
You're able to ground yourself, and we are trying to do something special. We're trying to break generational patterns. We're trying to be better parents for our children so they can learn how to do this because, right, there's no relationship that doesn't have it, does it?
100%. And this conversation, any of these brave conversations, the ultimate goal is to bring you closer together. The ultimate goal is to close your energy leaks within your relationship so you can have the energy to do the things that matter. But if we are stuffing things under, if we are ignoring things, shoving it under the rug, if we are leaving these energy leaks open, it's going to have a compounding effect on every other part of your relationship.
I'll every other part of your life, because eventually, as much as it'll bleed over.
100%.
It'll bleed over. And there's an interesting phenomenon, Melissa. You might think this is so when most men come into my program, 80% of them, marriage is a mess, life is a mess, how's work? Oh, it's okay. Yeah, no, I'm good there. Right. And because they're able to, they feel they're able to compartmentalize. But if you're not communicating your truth where you need to do it most, what impact does that have on you as a professional? Are you people pleasing there too? Are you disagreeable? Are you reactive? Are you defensive? People think they can compartmentalize it to the home, but they can't, can they?
Absolutely not. And it drips out over time. You may be able to keep that compartment for some time, but eventually, to your point, it topples over.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then the
yeah.
last step in this framework is E, which stands for end with action. And this is really all about co-creating a plan forward. So a lot of the conversational frameworks that I found about how to have hard conversations, where I thought there was a gap was this last piece. And again, coming back to this idea that an apology without a change in behavior means nothing. And similarly, when you can have this hard conversation, you can get into alignment. But if you don't take accountability for actually co creating what is the one or two actions that we each need to take moving forward in order to break the pattern, to feel more supported, to feel more deeply connected. So, really making an action plan and putting it in your calendar. Treating it like you would absolutely anything else in any other part of your life because you know if something's not in your calendar, it's probably not happening. And finding that opportunity to say, hey, or when this issue comes up again, this is what I'm commit to doing differently. And then having your partner also commit to what they are doing differently. And that co creation element, I cannot underscore the importance enough because that's how you want to frame it. Say, hey, let's co create a plan for moving forward. And it brings your partner in, not feeling like they are just sitting there listening to you or just sharing their feelings with no end in action, because the actions are where you start to make meaningful change.
And I want to emphasize something you said, Melissa, that I absolutely love. And it's such a low hanging piece of fruit. And sometimes I feel like I'm highlighting things that are so simple and so obvious. Put it in the calendar. My old boss said to me, I'll never forget her. Her name's Maria Ratarta from the Hartford Financial Services Group. It was my first non legal role. I drove this poor woman crazy. Melissa, I have to give her props because she changed my life. She was helping me manage my calendar to be a better leader. And she opens up my calendar and she sees I have all my appointments there. And I got my dentist appointments there, my doctor's appointments there. And she says, now I've asked you to do something for me. Where's that?
Mm,
And I
wow.
went, you have your doctor appointment there. You have like this is and Craig, this isn't just you. This is the most important project you're working on. This is your what you get rewarded for. This is it. Where is it? Where is that time dedicated to this important thing in the calendar? And it wasn't there, and it was a lesson I eventually brought over to my personal life. If it's important, it goes in the calendar because we are managing our most precious resource of time. If it's not in the calendar, it ain't getting done.
Could not agree more. And that's even true for when you're thinking about how you can start setting up frameworks within your relationship, rituals within your relationship for connection. And again, this may feel foreign initially, but it's so profound. Even early in my marriage with my husband, Akshay, so we had put in our calendar 8 p.m. every night our appreciation ritual. So we take 15 minutes at the end of every day to express appreciation for what the other person did for us that day or something we admire about them. And that may sound very tactical and foreign initially, and it eventually fell off the calendar because we were doing it so habitually. But for the first, I would say 6 months, it was on the calendar, it would pop up as a reminder, and was a way to make sure that we were orienting ourselves towards the positive, looking for what is our partner doing right and for us, and taking the time to express it. Because that's often we're thinking these wonderful things about our partner, how much we love them, how much we admire them. But how often do we take that next step to say it, to share it?
Oh, we take it for granted. We assume
Exactly.
they
I know
know.
we love them. Why do I have to say it?
I'll tell them on Valentine's, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I love this scheduling and having now, was it hard for you to get into that pattern? Did you fall off and come back in? Can you share some of the struggles about maintaining a routine like that? Did you have any of those?
Yes. So we were very, very dedicated and diligent doing this leading up to my husband's expedition across Antarctica, where we had to raise the 1.1 million that you mentioned. And so our first year of marriage was very intense. And that's actually where this ritual was really born from, was making sure that even if we weren't getting the same kind of date nights, quality time, we were juggling a lot. We were traveling the world for 80% of the year. We were chasing snow basically for his training, and through all the stress and that extra element, we wanted to make sure that we had some sort of system in place to really feel deeply connected, at least at the end of every day. And so we built this ritual. And then once the expedition was over, we fell off. Life got a little bit easier. We could breathe for a moment, and we stopped doing it for about a month. And I noticed a distinct difference in the quality of our connection and how we got a little bit routine in the way we were engaging with each other. And there just wasn't that same level of appreciation being expressed. And so I brought it up to him. I said, hey, can we bring this back? We didn't necessarily put it on the calendar, but we just made the intention because by that point we had built the habit. But like anything, if you stop feeding it, you can fall off, but that doesn't mean it's done and you can't come back to it. So now it is firmly a part of our evening ritual every single night and has been for over a year.
It's so important. I'm going to incorporate that. I declare it here now. Michelle and I are going to do that every
I
night. It's an
love it.
important thing. We're going to integrate it into our infrastructure. I do it, but as always, I love this opportunity to improve. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. And I will say one great question for anyone listening. If you are struggling with what do I express appreciation for, or what do I acknowledge my partner for, a fantastic question you can ask is, what can I acknowledge you for today? And what that does is it gives your partner the opportunity also to share the things they would like acknowledgement for. There's probably a lot of things they're doing for you that go very unseen. And that's where it gives them the opportunity to express it. And the caveat I want to add here is do not just reply, thanks. I've heard this when I've done some couples facilitation around, hey, let's implement this ritual, that the initial response is just thank you, especially if you're not someone who's used to giving a lot of verbal affirmation. So instead of just simply saying thank you after they identify what they would like to be acknowledged for, the next step is to, again, this will feel formulaic, repeat back everything they just said. So instead of saying thanks, you say, thank you for picking up the kids from school. Thank you for everything you do to keep our house running. Thank you for the effort you put into your job today and for making the money that contributes to our life, right? So repeating back the specific things they do is a critical and often missed step when someone starts to implement this ritual. But it only takes 2 or 3 minutes at most every evening. And you can do this whether or not you are in the same place. Even if your partner is traveling, this can be a quick phone call. It can even be a text message. But building that habit and really, really committing to it is how you start to orient yourself towards the positive for your partner, especially in cases where you're rebuilding trust. This is great for the partner that maybe feels a little concern and they're now looking for things you are doing wrong. This is a way to orient them towards the positive. A great example of this, let's say you decide one day that you're really wanting to buy a red Tesla. All of a sudden, you start to see red Teslas in every parking lot, every time you drive, because you're looking for it. Our brains are taking in so much information every single day, and we are filtering it through the lens of what our goals are. So if your goal is to now look for the things that your partner is doing well, you are going to see more things they are doing well. And this goes for both partners.
It's such an important, like, relational leadership. Each person taking accountability for the outcome that they seek, and like we would do professionally, putting in place the protocols, processes, and I use those words on purpose because they're
Yes.
so not romantic. I'm saying that,
Yeah.
the policies and procedures. I never would have dreamed that when I was a project manager, how much I loathe the P&Ps, the policies and procedures, that I would come to realize how important it is to have that infrastructure, that commitment, that consistency, particularly in one of the most important areas of your life.
And I think that's
Now,
also, I was just going to say, add to that, that's especially true for people who say their objection is, oh, but I want spontaneity in our relationship. Structure actually creates the conditions for
creates it.
spontaneity.
It creates it. It
Yes.
creates it. Creates it. Yes, I want to second that. Now, end with action. We
Hmm.
talked about the co-creating a solution, plan a time to take action, and
Yes.
there's last thing. Did you say that, or did I miss it? Because I want to make sure we end on a bang. What's number three there?
Yeah, I think it's really committing to doing the action. And I think it's that taking piece of that ownership.
And ending with a hug.
Yes, yes, and ending with, yeah, ending with more physical affection. Yes, the ending with a hug is absolutely critical, or some sort of additional, like, squeeze, something physical to really just kind of lock that in. Because there's a lot of research that shows, actually, I believe 80% of the damage is reduced when you have physical contact. The emotional damage is reduced by 80% at the end of a hard conversation simply by having physical contact.
And that makes so much sense because I mean I've done it, and the pull, especially with clients who have issues around touch,
Yeah.
issues around vulnerability. This really compels you, guides you, leads you into a framework that's actually going to get results in your relationship. Now, what do you say, Melissa, to the person whose partner refuses to participate? Doesn't want to commit the effort, see they don't need to do anything, and the person really, really, really wants to make it work, and they're not at that point yet where they're ready to pull the plug. It's been a long-standing marriage. There's been a lot of damage done. How can the what do you say to that person?
I say to that person initially trying this, if this does not have the impact, if they're not willing to do that, you model the behavior you want to see. And I think a lot of times in these cases where there's been a lot of longstanding damage, things that have happened that pull people apart in the relationship, is to begin by simply modeling the behavior, show, don't tell. And that's how you start to begin that, to build that sense of safety and trust, and doing that over time. So committing to taking these actions, even if they haven't, you start taking these actions, and that will naturally begin to shift it for your partner in that they will start to trust you more. And over time, as that trust is built, then you re-engage this conversation, but you don't just leave it. So if the first time it doesn't work, there have been many conversations, not only in the couples that I work with, but in my own marriage, where we had to have the same conversation 3, 4 times before we came to resolution. It's not about coming to resolution on the first time. It's about that commitment to continue the conversation and demonstrate through your actions that there has been a shift and a change in you and how you want to show up and operate.
Yeah, it's one of the principles we talk here because we do a lot of parts work, Melissa, is self-leadership. And this is a perfect example. And I want to be clear for you guys listening who might be hesitant to bring something like this to your partner. I say lean into that discomfort because if she's with you, people want to be happy. All right. So being proactive in bringing her this and her to him can bring value. But I want to be clear, like Melissa said, there's a couple of areas. Yeah, there's specific things around the couple, but you can do everything here.
Mhm.
There's nothing here besides scheduling a time, but you can lead. You can schedule your time. You can be proactive. You can begin within.
And I really have to say, too, that it only takes one person to begin breaking a pattern.
That's right.
And when we are in these cycles of conflict and hard conversations not going well, if you stop reacting, your partner doesn't have something to keep the cycle going with. And it doesn't mean the other person doesn't need to take ownership, but you can be the catalyst for change. And I think that complete ownership and radical ownership, even in things in partnership, is how you really begin to show up as your best self. And to your language, you begin to lead. And I think taking that leadership role, even in hard conversations, is key. The other thing I want to acknowledge too is there should be fear that comes up when you go to have these conversations. Fear means you care. Fear means there's something of value here, and you do not need the fear to go away or to be fearless to take action because you cannot have courage without fear. And so the fact that the fear is there is actually an indicator that you are about to go into a conversation that matters.
It's an indicator of, yeah, importance or significance. It means I'm leaning into discomfort. I'm doing the right thing here. Yeah, that's an excellent, like a barometer. Am I afraid to have this conversation? And one of the questions I pose for my guys that some of them ask themselves regularly is, what would I say to my partner if I was brave, courageous, a leader?
Beautiful, beautiful. And I
And
think that
so,
that brave conversation idea, that's a beautiful trigger to remember this framework.
yeah, it really is. So let's review the
Mhm.
framework,
Yeah.
high level overview. Then we'll talk about Melissa, where people can find you. And don't worry, guys and gals, Melissa's coming back. We've got a lot to talk about. We've really made a great connection. Let's so we leave them with that overview. Let's go from the top, from B.
So B is begin within. So decide the clear outcome that you want, whether that's deeper connection, more support, or to break a pattern. Really assume positive intent, visualize a positive outcome, get yourself into a regulated state, and then you request a time to talk. So R is request a time to talk. Ask your partner when would be a good time for them to have a conversation. A is affirm and share. So
Yeah,
opening the conversation with this idea that you are on the same page, you're on the same team, you're not going to say this perfectly, and then sharing using I feel statements, not accusation language. What is it that you feel has been off and what would you like to see differently? V stands for view and validate. So requesting your partner's take, their story they're telling themselves, their lens of reality, if you will, and then validating their emotional experience, acknowledging the impact on their emotions, their well being that maybe an action in the past has had. And that validation does not mean agreement, but it is absolutely essential before they can fully hear you. And then E is ending with action, co creating a plan. What is one or two actions you and your partner can take moving forward, whether that's a check in every Sunday or something to that effect that can really move the needle? Putting it in your calendar, and yes, ending with a hug. And really maintaining that physical contact through the whole conversation. But that extra layer of physical affection at the end will really help to integrate and downregulate both of your nervous systems.
so important. And so, guys, gal, you got to get this. You really have to get this. This is something that Michelle and I, you heard me say earlier, have incorporated. It brings together a lot of the concepts that we've talked about here over the course of 13 years, but in a beautiful, accessible, easier. I'm not going to suggest, right? Because we're talking about fear and difficult conversations. So make sure you get this. Please, please, please get this. And how can people find you, Melissa, on the web? And tell us a little bit about that. And I'm going to put all this in the show notes, everybody. So don't worry, but let's hear it here too.
Beautiful. So the way that you can connect with me, my website is melissananavati.com. You can also type in peakperformancelove.com. It will send you there. And on Instagram, it's at Melissa Nanavati. And on YouTube, it is at Peak Performance Love. Peak Performance Love is actually the title of the upcoming manuscript that my husband and I just finished co-authoring. So it's all about high achievers, how they can really find the one, build chemistry, navigate hard conversations, a lot of things we talked about today, but unpacked in a very detailed way and build the foundation for a connection that lasts. So that is still, we're still ways out from publishing, but in the meantime, connect with me on any of these platforms. I would love to be able to help answer any questions that you had while listening, and always feel free to reach out because really this is my soul's path and the work that lights me up. And having been through a lot of my own challenges in this department, and now having worked with so many executive founders, leaders that find that this is the one area of life they still really struggle to have that same level of courage, I just want to reiterate you are not alone, and it does not mean you have failed. Relationship is simply a set of skills, and to be effective at it, anybody can develop these skills. You are already applying them in your work life, and my work is showing you how to apply them in your love life.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. And what I love about what Melissa and her husband have done is this is the relationship architecture, right? In the mindful habit system, how to not how to live a life of self-leadership and control. What systems do you need in order to accomplish this objective, right? And so Melissa's really developed this out on the relationship side. I'm so excited we met, Melissa, and I'm really looking forward to collaborating in the future. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for giving me your most precious time. Please make sure you download this. It will bring instant value to your life, whether your partner's participating or not. You can create the reality. So this is something that brings value into your relationship. It doesn't come natural. We don't have the skills, but we can learn them. Thank you so much for listening. Make it great. Catch you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.